We've got a lot to chat about with our next guest here on GCR. Of course, former NFL quarterback, now with Fox Sports, as well as with 710 Seattle Sports. He is our friend, Mr. Brock Huard, and he's back with us now here on GCR. Brock, it's Glenn in Baltimore. It's so good to catch up as always. Thank you for taking the time for us.
Yeah, you bet, Glenn. We don't get to do this enough because we don't get the Seahawks and Ravens very often to two of the more established cultures in the NFL. And I know in Seattle land, super excited to see where these Hawks are. Great measuring stick game this weekend, and always fun to catch up with you.
I was thinking about this week, Brock, because there are some people in Baltimore that will bang like the disrespect drum, right? They'll be like, "Wow, you know what? Why aren't the Ravens getting more love as a Super Bowl favorite? They're 6-2. You saw what they did to the Lions." And it's wild to me because I would think that in Seattle there's got to be almost an enormous amount of that. At 5-2, they're still touchdown, dogs on the road. Why do you think people are reluctant still to buy into this Seahawks team as being a legitimate Super Bowl threat?
Well, I would say nationally, Glenn, it's two things. First name Geno, last name Smith.
Yeah.
So, I think from just the national optics level, it's like, this is a good team. And Pete's a great coach, and John Schneider's had two remarkable drafts, and they got a lot of young studs. The Charbonnet guy, the Ken Walker guy, the Devin Witherspoon's a revelation.
Phew.
They got a lot of speed and a lot of great young players. But I think they're still nationally, and he kind of looked, and even after a great season last year where he broke franchise records and put up numbers that even Russell Wilson didn't put up from a yardage and touchdown interception, all this stuff. But there was still but he's Geno. Yeah, he's going to come down to earth. Yeah, but he's good. He's not great. Yeah, he's just a manager. He's not a guy that's going to lead a team deep into the playoffs or even a Super Bowl. So unlike Baltimore, where you've got an MVP and a Super Bowl caliber guy in Lamar, I think Geno Smith's a big reason, Glenn, why I think most think good team, but probably still not a great team in Seattle.
But as you point out, there is so much to like about the roster, and Geno did play really well and has played really well. Are we wrong to be dismissive of the possibility that Geno Smith could win a Super Bowl as the Seahawks quarterback?
Well, we're going to know, and just listening to Pete in his presser yesterday and being the flagship of the Seahawks as our station is in Seattle, and we get to chat with Pete every Monday. He jumps on with Salk and I, and you can just hear it as Mike and I have listened to Pete now for 14 years. We've been together for these Mondays and for these seasons, and Pete, he said this to us about 4 weeks ago, Glenn. He said, "Gosh, I just really love this team." And he hadn't said that in the last 4 or 5 years. There have been other dramas going on, and I think most of us knew they were kind of hanging on to some of the past. They needed to turn this thing over. They needed to get younger. And now that they have, they've built a really good crew around Geno. But these next 5 weeks, and Pete said it yesterday in his presser, he said, these are the games where you judge yourself. This is championship level stuff, and we get to see where we're at. And in particular, and he didn't say his name, but we get to see where Geno is.
Yeah.
It's Baltimore. It's going to be San Fran twice. It's going to be Philly. It's going to be Dallas. All of that is in the next 7 weeks. So we're going to get to see where Geno is because, Glenn, I've never seen a team with 10 offensive linemen, and they could play 10 guys. They've got 2 great young running backs. They got 3 tight ends, and Jackson Smith and Jigba with DK and Tyler. You got 3 receivers. So you have a complete group there and a defense that's playing better than it has since 2016. So it really, a lot of it's going to fall on Geno and his ability to take care of the football, which has been a problem the last 3, 4, 5 weeks, putting the ball in harm's way, multiple interceptions in multiple games. So he's going to have to match the people around him, and there's going to be a whole lot of judgment to see if he can go from good to great, because if he can't, to make a playoff run.
He is Brock Huard. He is with us here on Glenn Clark Radio. We're getting ready for Ravens Seahawks. We're also going to talk a little Maryland in a second, as he'll have Maryland Penn State on Saturday. Brock, the secondary, what you brought up, it is nuts. Like with Witherspoon and the young guys that were found later on in the draft, I'm almost jealous of everything that the Seahawks have been able to do. That all said, is it a different animal facing Lamar Jackson? And what do you make of the fact that Lamar Jackson has only ever lost 1 game to an NFC team over the year? There's this thought that it's difficult to prepare for Lamar Jackson when you don't see him as frequently. For as good as that defense is it a different animal coming up on Sunday?
Yeah, I would agree with that sentiment. When you don't have the familiarity in the background and you're trying to, in the NFL, you don't get a lot of practice time. I know you get walkthroughs and you get a few hours on the field on Wednesday and Thursday, but you don't get the kind of time to prepare as divisional foes do, as even AFC foes that have faced him and know what that is like. So I do think that is a big challenge, and why he, along with just their physical makeup and their developed culture that John has built there, makes it very difficult for, somebody on the other side of the conference to come in and tangle with them. But you need speed. I mean, if you're going to contain Lamar and the zone read and the RPO and the screen game and your tight end, you have to have speed at all three levels. And if this were last year or the year before, Glenn, or the 2 years before that, we were chatting on our show today. I think we got to go back to 2016, the last time the Seahawks defense was this complete. And they've got it at all three levels. And you have tremendous speed on the perimeter. You have tackling safeties in Diggs and Jamal, which you have to have. Jordan Brooks is in a contract year at linebacker. He and Queen were drafted next to each other in that draft. Many of us wanted Queen, thought he was a little faster, a little more dynamic. I think over the course of their careers, Jordan right now is accelerated. He's playing at a different level with Bobby Wagner next to him. And then you had Leonard Williams this week with the trade deadline move, an absolute war daddy to rotate amongst a couple pretty good defensive tackles. So this is going to be awesome, man. I can't wait to see it. I don't think the Seahawks get throttled like the Lions do. Do they come out and win in Baltimore? I don't know. But my gut tells me, as complete as this defense is on all three levels, as excited as they are going to be, the edge, the chip on their shoulder with Jamal, the energy with Spoon, it's going to be more than likely a possession or two in the fourth quarter that will define it.
You didn't even mention Boye Mafe, man, who's just been unbelievable too. So what is the right? And I feel like it's the wrong way to ask this. I ask this question a lot when the Ravens face inferior opponents, which is what is the roadmap. I don't think the Seahawks are an inferior opponent, but what goes right? What happens on Sunday for the Seahawks to be able to come across the country and beat Lamar Jackson and the Ravens?
Well, they've done a great job in these environments, Glenn. They rise to the occasion. They love prime time. Each record, I know this is not Sunday night. I know this is not Monday night. But go look at his record on those nights and in these showcase games. He stands pretty tall with his team because they love to compete. They handle these East Coast trips better than any Seahawks coach did ever in the 30-plus years that preceded Pete Carroll. So I don't think any of that will be an issue whatsoever. It is just going to be the point of attack. And came across the country and to hit the Seahawks in the mouth, I remember vividly that fourth down. Lamar comes to the sideline. Harbaugh asks him, what do you want to do? And finish that game off. So it's going to be about the tackling, as it always is. If the Seahawks can tackle in the open field, if you're looking at 3-4 yard runs and not 7-8 yard runs, if they can contain that, they do have dudes that can take it away. They took it away 3 times in Detroit. They took it away 3 times in New York. They took it away 3 times last weekend at home. This is a team that can take the ball away, and I hate to be that simple, but you tackle, you take the ball away, you'll go to the East Coast and come away with the biggest win yet of the season for the Hawks.
Brock, I asked this knowing you've got so many games and so many teams that you have to watch. Have you been able to watch any of Lamar this season specifically?
Not enough to compare and contrast. A huge fan of Monken.
Yeah.
I thought that was a tremendous hire by John to kind of go outside the box and familiarity and bring a guy that's so innovative at Georgia. So I have not. I've just seen red zone, frankly, bits and pieces. But I'm looking forward to kind of comparing and contrasting and seeing if he can take some steps to add a little more depth to their game plan, to their playbook, which I think they're going to have to do. Maybe not this Sunday, but you know this, Glenn. When you get to the playoffs, you get against familiar foes. Too often they put Lamar in a box in the playoffs, and they've got to be able to expand it. So I'm kind of anxious to see his growth and development in this system.
I'm telling you, man, he has looked like an orchestra conductor at times this year. He has looked so cool and comfortable. There have been mistakes, and he's fumbled the ball a few times, but, man, he has looked – and, we've seen high level from Lamar, but this has been at times something even breathtaking, what he has offered in this Todd Monken offense. Brock, I mentioned you're going to be on the call, Maryland, Penn State as well on Saturday for Fox, and it's rough times right now. And there was a lot of excitement about this Maryland team. And, even when they lost to Ohio State, they were competitive for a while. And there was a thought that, hey, you pick yourself up, you go win the next couple of games. And there was maybe going to be a lot of excitement, right? We were thinking maybe Big Noon Kickoff would be here in College Park and things like that. It has not gone that route. As you've been prepping for this game, the discipline stands out to me significantly, just the number of self-inflicted mistakes that I just don't know what to make of it. What else jumps out at you in what's gone south for Maryland these last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think that's very fair. I would agree with you. We were kind of watching this unfold and thinking the same thing. And my producer, his girls both go to Maryland. One's a senior, one's a sophomore. So he was really hoping for this game. And we ended up getting it, and largely because Penn State's still a viable playoff team with what they have on their schedule and everything else. And I've seen Maryland, I think, every year with Talia over the last 4 years. And I guess I start there with a little bit of a Geno Smith comparison, frankly, Glenn, where, there's enough experience and you're like, don't put that ball in harm's way. Don't turn it over. Don't make that decision. That's a first-year starter decision. That's not a fourth-year starter decision. Just take care of the ball. And I got to watch the tape, and I find myself screaming that a bunch of times. Like, come on, man. Come on, Talia. You played a ton of ball. Like, see the safety. Take care of the football. Don't make that decision. So that's the simplest. That's the biggest target. That always is head coach and quarterback. But I think you're right. It is just also the discipline and belief to know, we've got to be sharp here down the stretch to do this. This isn't the non-conference. This isn't September. October, November, that record's pretty brutal, unfortunately, for Mike over the last few years. And as you said, the discipline to clean it up and just the mindset to finish. I think they'll be competitive with Penn State. Penn State won't run away from them. They're not terribly explosive on offense. But Talia is going to have to play a game, play in and play out, series in, series out, and most importantly, when it matters the most in the final 15 minutes.
What you just said there is important, Brock, because there are folks back this way that are worried that this turns into utter, like that you lose a couple of these games and you look at the schedule ahead, and even Rutgers and Nebraska are not cakewalks the way that they've played this season. Is there any danger that this goes really south? And I say this, look, full disclosure, I like Mike Locksley a lot personally. I think he was the right man for the job, and I don't think people understand how difficult of a job it is to be the football coach at the University of Maryland. It is not it is an unpleasant job to take. But boy, I'm a bit nervous about how the rest of this season goes. Is there any danger that it falls apart?
Well, they're a veteran team, Glenn, and they got a lot of veteran guys up front at the line of scrimmage. You've got a quarterback that's veteran. You got veteran pieces kind of all over the place defensively too. So you'd like to see those guys say, hey, man, enough is enough. And you really would have liked to have seen it at Evanston a week ago, to be honest with you. But they got out hit, man. I mean, that was humbling tape to watch. The number of times he was sacked, the number of times they were harassed, the number of times Northwestern was hitting them without you hitting them first. So certainly Mike addressed that post-game. He has in the press conferences. We'll meet with him tomorrow. But I will give True fans good news. If you want something to hold on to, Glenn, it was 1997, the last time that Kansas beat Oklahoma.
Hey.
Until last weekend. Last weekend, when Benetti and Huard were in the house, the uprights were torn down. They were carried to Palmer Pond out of the stadium. It was 1984, the last time they beat a top 10 team. They beat Kansas in their own building. Utah went on the road 2 weeks prior as underdogs at SC. So if there's a crew to come in and be the difference and beat Penn State at home for the first time since 1961, it may be this crew coming in.
I feel like it was Tessitore for years who was like that. He was the guy. Wherever he went, something magic had happened. I like this. I like this idea of it being you and Jason. That's the new crew that's making magic happen all over the country. And I imagine that you're enjoying college football season right now in the Pacific Northwest. I guess you've been too busy working to actually be able to truly enjoy it, but it's got to be an awful lot of fun out there right now.
Man, Kaylin DeBoer can coach. You talk about a tough job. Being a Maryland football coach is. There's not the tradition and history like Don James built through the 70s and 80s and 90s at Washington, and even New Heisel with the Rose Bowl. So the resources and the place, the stadium and the environment, with the right coach, you can get rocking in Seattle. And Kaylin DeBoer, man, won 15 in a row. He's 19-2. taken over for Jimmy Lake that was a disaster. So, yeah, they got it rocking. And if they beat SC this weekend, then I think your boy will get a home game, which I will be
that'll be
excited
great.
about to follow away.
That'll be cool. At Brock Huard on Twitter is how you follow him. And again, Maryland, Penn State, Saturday at 3:30 on Fox. Brock, always appreciate you, man. You've been so great over the years. Thank you for taking the time for us. Enjoy your trip our way on Saturday, and we'll look forward to chatting with you again down the road. All right.
I appreciate it, Glenn. Thank you, man. And be well. And, yeah, it should be a great game on Sunday between these Hawks and Ravens.